Our first big conversation of the day is on education. Education is often called a great equalizer, but we know it's not always equal, especially when systemic inequities affect all of us in different ways. That is why we have some brilliant speakers coming together on the panel: Inclusive Education for All, a gender transformative education system. This session asks, how can we build a truly gender transformative education system that not only ensures access but actively challenges gender norms?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, friends, our esteemed guests, our panelists. At our panel today, we're going to tackle something very important. And as Kanta said, how the young people are the hope for our future. We're going to talk about education, gender norms, and adolescence because that's who our future is. And that's where all of our work is actually focused. So, if young people are our hope for the future, schools are hot grounds for breeding that hope. Because schools can be magical, right? Education system can be actually magical. It can teach you how to have more gender progressive thoughts in your mind. It can push you to ask very difficult questions that as you grow older, you are very scared to ask. It helps you in socialization processes, how to have intergender conversation and and conversation with intergenerational conversation. It also creates an atmosphere which says that we believe in you, you are equal, and you are capable. It builds citizens for the future, which is really a very, very exceptional role that education has, and no other sector has that role. And so, for the for gender equality, there is no other space than education institutions and education system to make sure that discrimination and norms are ignored and obliterated from the school system. There has been some examples of how that can happen. Breakthrough itself has worked with governments in Punjab and Odisha, and now with many other governments, I hear, to make it possible to make changes in curriculum so that they're more gender progressive, to look at teacher training so that teachers do not bring their gender biases into the classroom, to work with the school and the education administrative staff so that they prioritize gender, and then to work with the adolescents and their parents through through parent teacher meetings and other spaces to make sure that gender equality is also embraced at home and in their lives. So NEP 2020 actually lays down a very good roadmap for gender equality, but it doesn't give you the SOPs or doesn't give you the road ahead or doesn't give you a very clear way to kind of follow NEP. How do you think government bodies can prioritize gender inclusion to actually address structural inequities that are there in the system already? Maybe other kind of intersectional inequities that are there. And what pathways are there so that accountability across all levels of education system can be shared with the stakeholders?
So I had this unique opportunity of working in the development sector for 4 5 years, and thereafter moved to civil services, worked there in different sort of sectors, tourism, revenue, etc., and come back 3 4 years back as director education WCD to the sector. So if I see, a lot of things have changed. So 12 years or 15 years ago, children did not have the POXO Act to protect themselves from child abuse. The women didn't have the POSH Act. The disabled had a very weak RPWD Act, which recognized only 7 disabilities and not 21, and so much more. Uh, so, I mean, lot of things we always had the constitution for ourselves, but other things have also followed, and a lot of gains have happened in the last some years, at least at the legislative level. Reservations are a big part of it. 33% reservation in panchayats has always been mandated, but thereafter taking it to, some states have mandated 50%, some in 33% for women in police. So a lot of things have moved on that front. Programmatically also, I mean, I see a ICPS as a big thing because 15 years ago it did not exist, and now it's there. It's so anybody to whom a child abuse is reported has somebody within the system. अगर मेरे पास एक कंप्लेंट आती है चाइल्ड अब्यूज की, आई नो व्हाट टू डू, तो एटलीस्ट इतना तो करो कि DCPU में जाके उसको फॉरवर्ड कर दो. So that whole structure has come up. So a lot of things are moving, and now with the NEP, hopefully things will get even faster. Now I think what could have been done in terms of legislation, provisioning of funds or whatever is there largely. I mean, we can still argue that we need to have reservation in parliament and assemblies and so much more. But at the same time, I think what really remains is the attitudinal shift, the gender norms in the society, and how, because that's kind of a new role for the government also to be a catalyst for that. It does the enforcement part, it knows how to do it, it knows how to do the provisioning part, KGBV कैसे बनाने हैं, मोटा मोटी कैसे चलाने हैं, आता है. लेकिन catalyst for societal change is something which is sort of the next sort of challenge for the government and the larger set community to how to get to it. So that is how I sort of see, and I hope that NEP with its vision, with its provisions, lends a hand.
I'm going to follow up with one question. ये gender word से लोग इतने डरते क्यों हैं? If you go and speak in a government setting, the moment you say the word gender, you are looked at as an alien. ये क्यों आए हैं? कैसे आए हैं? We don't need you. ये क्यों होते हैं? Why can't we come to a much more amicable and an amiable and a win-win kind of situation that we've discovered that can happen if we part?
Government is also essentially drawn from the society. All the actors come from the society. So society में भी कहाँ पे जेंडर नॉर्म्स के बारे में बात करने के लिए फ्री स्पेस है. तो जैसे वहाँ नहीं है वैसे ही यहाँ नहीं है. तो आई थिंक इट्स जस्ट अ रिफ्लेक्शन ऑफ दैट. प्रॉब्ली वी बिकम अ बिट मोर ब्यूरोक्रेटिक, बट मोर फेयरफुल. मेरा रिकॉर्डिंग करके यूट्यूब पे डाल देंगे तो मतलब मैं कुछ उल्टा पुल्टा बोल दूंगा, मतलब दैट काइंड ऑफ थिंग्स माइट कम अप, बट या आई मीन इट्स जस्ट अ रिफ्लेक्शन ऑफ व्हाट द सोसाइटी इज, and a bit more so.
So, Deepika, great to see you here. Deepika and I met a few weeks ago, and we had a long conversation on gender and how we can bring gender into the vocational and the skills training space. So, because it's an important aspect of the work, and their work, Lindahan's work, is largely with a lot of young girls. And there's some of them are really firebrands. We had a really lovely conversation with some of them. So NEP 2020 again envisions vocational education as a key to equitable learning and economic independence for women, right? What kind of scalable, innovative models is Lend a Hand exploring to again, dismantle gender biases, and also build agency and leadership among the girls who are, part of your program?
When we also look at the gender inclusivity and coming back maybe directly to the national education policy, because our work has been in the skill education space and how do we integrate skill education, and even from the point of view that how it brings the equality in the mindset as well, right? Because when you are teaching food processing, it should not only be for the girls, it should also equally be for the boys. And when you are teaching electrical, it should not only be for the girls and for the boys, but also be for the boys. And to address that, we had already initiated multi-skilling course, which encompasses all these things, and which is gender neutral, which female and male student both study that, which is combination of engineering, combination of food, and combination of healthcare, and all these initiatives. Now, national education policy, and very happy to share that mandates this multi-sector skill education for all the students, right? Which brings this component of including different kind of sectors in the learning space, right? So be it working with machine, be it working with humans, be it working with life forms like agriculture,
all the students will be studying that. So we are at the center of skill education, and being part of this NCRT committee as well, we are ensuring that these are the elements which are incorporated in this multi-sector skill education. In grade 9 and 10, students would be studying 6 sectors, 3 plus 3. And that's where we are also ensuring that this becomes a combination of electrical, carpentry, food processing, beauty and wellness, all these elements come there. The second thing, which again I'm leading at Lender Hand India and closely working with various states to integrate internship for school students. When we say internship, we also realize that doing internship itself is becoming a non-traditional thing from female students' point of view, because it is very uncomfortable for parents to send them for internship or for a work to a workplace. But because these are short duration internship, we are seeing there is a major shift. 82% of our students mentioned that their parents are taking more interest in their career journey. So internship at scale is something which is becoming more and more important. The NEP also emphasized that. Lender Hand India has already been implementing it since last 7-8 years, and now with the force of this NEP followed by NCF 2023, internship is also going to be an important element which provides a great workplace exposure to female students as well. So I think these are two major elements. One is multi-sector skill education, and another is internship, which is an exposure to workplace to student, is something we are looking.
Whenever we, mostly in civil society organization, we think of skill development and vocational training for girls, we have Papad Buddy, beauty treatment. We keep going back to the things that have worked as an age-old kind of a thing, which reinforces women's role and women's, um, uh, uh, kind of profile that, you are supposed to do only home-based work or domestic work that enhances the domesticity of a woman. So are you seeing a change, or are you bringing in a change in trying to push more women into non-traditional occupations and careers, and what's been your experience in doing that in a very few words?
So before that, I'll talk about two more things here, which are the factors which are stopping it, right? Because we also recently finished a study that what are the barriers of entry in such spaces, right? So 2-3 things came up, and of course these are not like unknown devils. These are known devils, that there is a financial literacy which is not happening. There is lack of mentorship for students. There is lack of awareness, and I myself come from a small town in Rajasthan. When we talk about these conversations are not happening in those towns. So in fact, my request is that maybe such dialogues should be conducted, maybe small cities like Kota. I come from Kota. So I think one is that are we providing enough information? Are we providing enough understanding to our female students that they can also participate in non-traditional courses? What are non-traditional courses to first place, right? Like even in case of agriculture, there are majority of female participation, but the overall wage composition, if you look at, it's very low, right? And similar to other sectors as well. So in case of this non-traditional career spaces, what we are trying to do is that again incorporating the elements of different type of non-traditional skilling modules, again such as electrical, healthcare, mm, even AI now becoming more and more in the focus. So these are the things which become mandatory for all the students regardless of the gender, right? Second, we are also working with ATLs across Maharashtra, 1,000 ATL schools we are working. And that's where also we are seeing that when you provide such spaces, non-traditional courses to female students, their confidence levels are certainly increasing, right? Because otherwise, time and again, we are told, we as in representing gender here, we are told that you cannot do this, or you should not take this pathway, or maybe this is meant for male in the society. I remember one a student, Alfia, very interested in automobile sector. in grade 11 she wanted to go for an internship, and her parents were like totally against it, that how can you work in a garage where there is no female in that workplace. And she went on fasting for one day and then the parents had to agree that okay, it's a 15 days internship, so go there. So I think they learn and they develop the capacity to negotiate as well. So I think these are certain observations we are having, that if you bring these elements, the confidence, the negotiation skills, these are also lifting up.
So systems change, and Co-Impact is a big proponent of systems change, and systems change funding generally is about convergence, right? Convergence of if we take a systems change in the education sector, it's a systems change among civil society organizations, government officials, bringing together other funders in this whole mix. So, how are you actually pushing this convergence model with your, with your partners? And what kind of learnings is Co-Impact actually seeing, in doing this systems change work? And especially when it comes to gender and gender equality, what has been your experience in trying to create that convergence?
So before I get started, I would say, systemic problems require systemic friendships. It cannot happen individually. And Co-Impact in itself is a collaborative philanthropy. So we are not individual or one funder giving funding, but it's a pooled fund giving funding. So that's the premise of where we start. And the other thing I will say is gender. When I say gender, hear it intersectional, and I'm sure that's what we mean here too, because the exclusion is not just on gender, but there's so many norms, and gender is the starting point. So those are the premise within which we'll work. I think there are three philosophies that I would like to talk here. तो पहला तो ये है कि अगर एक संस्था नॉन प्रॉफिट स्ट्रांग है तो वो सिस्टम्स को स्ट्रांग कर सकती है, और वो सिस्टम्स जो है वो अंत तक बच्चों, शिक्षिका, अध्यापकों, टीचर्स तक पहुंच सकते हैं. तो वो थ्रेड बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है. और जेंडर ना सिर्फ एंड में प्रोग्रामिंग के लिए, बट जेंडर इंटरनली ऑल्सो एज एन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन. व्हाट डज जेंडर मीन फॉर अस? As an organization, how strong are we in representation, voice, agency? So that's a very important lens. The second, I would say, is our engagement starts with what we call as design phase, which is a moment of stepping back. क्योंकि हम लोग इतने डूअर हैं कि हम करते जाना चाहते हैं. We continuously want to do what we are doing, but sometimes it's important to step back and look at the problem. And when you look at the problem, then what do you need to do to solve that problem? उसमें कुछ इंसाइट्स अलग आते हैं, और उसमें इंसाइट्स ये भी आते हैं कि कलेक्टिवली काम करना बहुत ज़रूरी है. क्योंकि प्रॉब्लम जब इतनी बड़ी है तो एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन उसके लिए पर्याप्त नहीं है, सफिशिएंट नहीं है काम करने के लिए. एंड दैट्स व्हेन यू नीड, and what we call as winning coalitions. And the idea is you get many partners together to solve for the problem. So somebody is looking at, and to give an example, sometimes movements offer a very interesting lens. So for example, आप education में काम कर रहे हैं, मगर अगर कोई movement inclusion पे काम कर रही है, how can that supplement your work? And allowing that space to non-profits also to think about the strategy, because sometimes collaboration just does not happen because there's no time to step back. There's no time to think of who else to bring on the table. So emphasizing that phase. And third is holding ourselves accountable as well. So learn continuously, change continuously. So those three, I would say, are the key strategies. And then, one thing I would say is a belief for Co-Impact is systems needs to shift for the end change to happen. So gender ke like immediate relief hai, right? Like there are no toilets in the school, or there's no menstrual support in the school, and the girl is not able to go to school. That's immediate need. And then there's a long-term change to say why the toilets don't exist, or why does the attitude of inclusion does not exist, right? Why are girls excluded? So you need to work on both sides of the spectrum. So while you're solving for the immediate, but the vision has to be more broader to say, how does this sustain, and with partners like government and various stakeholders on the table, how does that sustain for a long term? So those are the fundamental beliefs with which we are operating.
Any thought on how can we bring this kind of converging funding in the Indian philanthropic system? We hear this, it happens in the global north. People come together, put in, $1 billion for, toward. Why is it not happening in India? And is there a role that organizations like Coimbra can play in bringing together Indian philanthropists to actually invest in systems change in their own country?
So it's a journey, I would say. It's not an easy one. Uh, Everybody is used to working in their own ways. There's importance of logos. There's importance of who's doing what. I'm just being candid. So I feel like there's more that needs to happen, where you say, logos are not important, but the principle or the vision is important. So I would say, there are ways in which we socialize more informally, in terms of conversations, in terms of meeting people. And sometimes I feel change happens not because organizations engage, but because people trust each other. So bringing more people along in conversations, on also looking at what are the barriers of why we are not able to work together. And the other is to also find partnership in aligned. Not everybody will use systems change language. So for example, if Co-Impact has a systems change language, but sometimes you need like people who might have a very youth or a gender focus, for example, to supplement it. So looking at allies in different spaces. We are also trying to curate spaces where we can bring different organizations together. The other last thing I would say is nonprofits also hold that power. And I've seen with one nonprofit, what they did was they brought all their funders together. We'll not report 5 different things to 5 different funders. All of you come together on one call and we'll tell you why we do what we do. And I think sometimes those spaces are very valuable as well, because those funders often may not have talked to each other. But when they are on that table together, then suddenly you realize, oh, there's a lot of commonality there. And that could create more opportunities later. So I'm saying it's a long-term game in short. It's a journey. And you need individuals, ambassadors, and trust in that process. No easy shot right now, Shuvini, sorry.
Thank you so much. Next. Pankaj. So when I was with Breakthrough, when we started looking at this systems change model, and we spoke to about maybe 30 organizations working on education across the country. And we all heard from all of them, is that this is a great idea, bringing in gender into the education space. We don't do this. We are not capable of doing this, or we are, this is not our mandate. And so it was very disappointing to actually hear and then to find out who is going to be a likely partner for us and who is going to, work with us. So I think Indian schools or Indian CSOs working on education prioritize learning above all else, which is, what a school should actually do. But there are, other kind of things that schools provide which they're not looking at. So how do we actually build a field for shifting gender norms inside the Indian CSOs we are working in education? Just like, let's say, social emotional learning has become a field, or now early childhood development is becoming a developed field. How can we actually look at the education system and say, well, we will also, with learning, will also focus on shifting gender norms, so that, things like early marriages and, all, and then leadership and agency for girls are built and early marriages are stopped.
So back in 2019, me and my 2 co-founders, who are incredible women, Tanushree and Bindya, we set up Transform Schools. We were already doing really well on traditional learning outcomes. So we were one of those that you spoke of. We had figured out this crackerjack way of accelerating learning, pretty much based on the teach at the right level model. But this was going to be for secondary. We were able to prove it through an RCT that JPaul did, came back with really top of the line results. We even were audacious enough to apply for a co-impact in the second year of our existence along with Asar Center. So I think one of the things, and you spoke of sort of the process of stepping back and really looking at what you're doing. And I think while COVID gave us all a lot of hardships, it also gave us a moment of pause to step back and start looking at your own journey and the trajectory that you're taking. And the thing that sort of started to pop out when we started to reflect on each experience, speaking to educators, to children that we were supporting with, looking at data around vacancies, um, issues of science capital and the absence of those for young girls, uh, we found that more and more, and some of it came from our partners at Asar, with whom we had worked on a longitudinal study tracking a bunch of young children from middle into secondary school, really looking at factors that impinge into those journeys. And what we found was a big word that we tend to ignore in the education space starts with a P, patriarchy. Uh, how we view ourselves, how we value certain abilities in the society, how we assign economic value to some and none to several, how we limit, girls and their mobility through safety, security, and then impinging the access to learning, to these. How we limit them with stereotypes and social norms to also limit their abilities to dream. And part of this also, led to reflection of past personal experiences. As men, as women, across all genders, saying that are we the victims? Are we the perpetrators? Are we going to solve this? And I think where we landed was in time. It took us 4 years or so to really land and say that we are all actors, and it's on to us to shape what is possible. And really going back to agency within, not just for the organization, but for our colleagues, and most importantly for students that we work with, has to be a focus. And I think where we've landed is that Transform still focuses on traditional learning outcomes. But what we've been able to do now is to be able to marry that with helping redefine the purpose and the value of education itself. Another colleague of mine, who all of you know, she can be very, very persistent or a pest, depending on the day, Lipsa, and she talks about sort of really reframing societal standards around how we see adolescence, how do we see completion of school. And traditionally, we would think that, a ninth standard student should be able to do the following calculations, should be able to speak with a certain level of fluency. But what about realization of reproductive rights? What about the ability to choose? What about having the cognizance and the agency to act? Right? And I think those are critical functions that we had to make a huge shift towards, and it's still ongoing. And I think part of it came from adding one very important word to our organizational values, which was justice. So really saying, and I think somebody spoke of intersectionality that way, saying that the moment you add that word to what you do, the purpose of education also becomes very clear. I think coming to the core question is how to really help all of us, and I'm not being patronizing in that sense, but I'm saying that how do we enable all of us to really get to a point where we say that employability is just one core aspect of learning outcomes. It is our ability to break class divides, to bridge where caste and gender relegates us. And that's for men as well, right? It forces you to be, things that you don't necessarily have a choice to be. You have to be just that. How do we bake those into our teaching and learning? And Husky's here, Prerna's here. Those are two colleagues who actually work on this day in and day out for us. How do you bring to your choice of stories, choice of text, choice of lessons on citizenry, of constitution into your curriculum, rather than it being something separate, bespoke, exotic, थोड़ा सा gender डाल देते हैं इसमें, is a thing that we, are guilty of. And how do we really bring that to the fore, by not bothering to put that as a separate piece, but bake that in? I think it is really difficult, John. And I think this is the journey that all of us need to embark with. But I just want to leave you with, I think, just one important thought, that really making sure that we redefine how we see educational success is that is what will set us free. And I think currently we're defining it in a very, very narrow way. We were speaking about this a little bit earlier, saying that, skilling is not only about employment.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's where
It's about building confidence. It's about building leadership. It's about so many others.
So that's where I think the journey is for us, and I think the larger civil society, government actors, and even funders, I guess.
I want to go back to Jatinji Singh. From a government perspective, for Dadra Nagar Haveli and Daman and Diu, you've already embarked on a journey of bringing in a gender transformative element into the work. What prompted you to take this decision? Why were you inspired to do this?
Firstly, the policy documents are enablers. So NEP vision or Samagra Shiksha funds do help if I want to do something in the system towards gender. So the statement is already there. File में डालना है तो वो पैरा उठा के लॉजिक बन जाएगा कि क्यों करना. पैसा भी समग्र शिक्षा ने दे दिया है तो बहुत ज़्यादा फाइट नहीं है. So all these things are enablers, but then you have to, finally somebody has to take that call कि ये करना है और ये this is important, and you also have to sort of pick up your sword. I think for me personally, I had been part of a gender education experience in the sense that my education at IRMA, there was a course, full-blown course, full credit course in gender issues and development. So I'd seen the power of creating a space in the classroom where gender could be discussed. As we said, there aren't many spaces where we could discuss those things. And a classroom does provide a very good setting for that, because हम उम्र बच्चे हैं, बहुत ज़्यादा बाप के सामने नहीं बोलना है कि ये गड़बड़ है. It gives a certain kind of a security, similarity. It does. I think the another thing that prompted me was the fact that it was a demonstrated success. I was fully sold to the idea that gender is a problem, needs to be solved, I have to do something. But still I might not have done it. Had I not had the confidence, इससे चीज़ें बदलेंगी. So just because there was a JPAL study which said that, okay, this has been done in Punjab, I come from Punjab, वहाँ बदल गया तो फिर यहाँ तो आसान होगा, kind of thing. So I think demonstrable success also, proven success helps you make those decisions. Now coming back to what will it take to sort of universalize it or to see it as a sector. पहली चीज़ तो it takes time. And we are impatient, we are restless, and God bless that. But at the same time, sometimes it does lead to frustration, and therefore it helps to have that kind of understanding कि समय तो लगता है. I was out of college. I came to Pratham as my first job in 2006. So first Asar had just been released, and it showed कि 50% बच्चे तो स्कूल जाने वाले पढ़ते ही नहीं हैं. And it was so obvious then that this is the biggest gap in learning. First set of JPAL studies had started coming in, showed evidence कि हाँ भाई बदल तो सकता है. And same time, it still took 16 years for Nipun to come. After the problem was recognized, the solutions were there, tried, tested, proven. So because we are such a huge country and with so many diverse actors, तो impatience ठीक है, but थोड़ा सा वो भी अब उम्र के साथ मतलब थोड़ा थोड़ा it helps to know that time लगेगा. We have to be there for the long haul. It's not going to change just like that. जिंदगी लगेगी. इस इशू पे अगर जिंदगी लगानी है, मतलब अगर बदलना है तो जिंदगी लगानी पड़ेगी. So I think, yeah, these are the few levers that I can think of. As more people experience a gender transformative education system, it will yield, it will, sort of एक दिए से दूसरा दिया जलता है, और and evidence matter. It builds confidence that yes, something can be changed. Inequity is tolerable only till the time you sort of you think it cannot be changed. When you know that it can be changed and still I'm in that situation, then it forces you to do something about it. So I think that is also the lever. So evidence brings that confidence, brings that hope to that बदल तो सकता है, अब करेंगे तो करना पड़ेगा.
So we are not always lucky to have government officials from IRMA with an experience in Pratham. It's an easy, it's very easy to kind of, sell to that kind of a person. So is there a way we can influence other, state officials, other people?
As I said, I think evidence, states talking to each other, let more people who have been champions. See, Punjab. And then it's also another thing, I think, and it's another dimension to that. Second priority पे तो आएगा. I think वो भी एक reasonable understanding है. मतलब I have been the director for last 3 years. So the first interventions I started were on ECC, were on FLN. अब अगर बच्चा पढ़ेगा ही नहीं तो फिर तारों की टोली पढ़ेगा कैसे? That understanding has to come, and I think Punjab has done it because it is ahead of the curve on learning. Odisha is very much on the way. So I think वो भी एक journey के साथ का एक part है कि when do people say कि this is, because अगर बच्चे 50% बच्चे पढ़ नहीं रहे हैं तो it will come later. तो वो भी एक sort of humility चाहिए कि मतलब understanding चाहिए कि ये ठीक है, कोई बात नहीं. So I think 2006 when I joined Pratham, we were at the same sort of a moment. Some
Right.
proven models
Right,
and understanding that the problem is grave.
right.
So 16 years, it became Nipun. So I think from here on, it's another longer we might be able to sort of छोटा कर सकता है उसको 10-12 साल तक, but it is going to take that kind of thing with all of us working together, pulling all our resources, for this mainstreaming will require it will be even more tougher because it is so nuanced. The change is so nuanced. So learning level change करना काफी हद तक काफी स्थूल काम है. I can show a child on a video not reading fluently and reading fluently.
पर ये कैसी?
बट ये कैसे दिखाएंगे कि जेंडर के नॉर्म्स उनके दिमाग में बदल गए हैं प्रोग्राम करने के बाद?
Right.
I mean, therefore, we are in for the long haul.
Neeta, I'm going to ask you, you've seen, you've supported organizations who are working in systems change in gender. Yeah. What would be your recommendation to, at the most recommendation to other organizations who want to embark in this path of systems change and have gender as a component with that? What would be your 2 kind of advice or recommendations?
So one is look at the problem and look at the root causes of the problem. Classes gender inclusive नहीं है, curriculum में teacher कोई role model नहीं है gender का. Where does this stem from? And it stems from perspective, it stems from mindset, it stems from budgetary allocation नहीं है, या कोई data नहीं है कि gender कितनी girls complete कर रही हैं. So look at the problem first and the causes of why the problem remains. And then also just look at what are those key drivers that can change that inertia. There's something that's holding to the system. Is it evidence? Ki we don't know what works. especially in gender, because it's such nuanced. It's not as tangible as FLN. So, what's holding that inertia? Or is it mindset? Is that mindset of teacher, community, both parents? So, where does that reside from? So, problem, causes, and then what are those key drivers? And then also recognizing you cannot do this alone. It's a bigger journey and it will take time. Um, so so those would be like key levers, and then also look at where does complementarity comes in. Who are the other people? Because you also have to think of the incentive for the teacher, right? Why would that teacher suddenly change behavior, right? And that lift should be easy for, if you're recommending a change. So then, what does it mean for a teacher? Am I teaching a new curriculum? Am I teaching it differently? Or I'm changing my ways of being? So if you ask someone to do something extra, why would they do it? So think of that planning first, and then look at your solutions. So and then how do you embed this gender not just as a curriculum but also as a way of being in the classroom, right? As role modeling, as inclusive, who raises hand, who am I addressing first? So that starts from that inside journey.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Pankaj, so Transform School designs, tests, and scales, educational solutions, right? How do you see the intersection with gender? And, is there a specific, like Neeta was mentioning, is there a specific indicator that you are looking at to change?
There are three that we are really focused on. And I think one which really looks at participation and gains, across, because that's one which we have been flummoxed by, which is where we've looked at girls participating less but gaining more. It's also a story all of us witness every time board examination results come out, and all of us are overjoyed. And I always find this interesting because why are we perplexed about this? It should be something which is not.
लड़कियां इतनी अच्छी कैसे कर रही है?
I think the second part is that at the instruction level, how much have we been able to bake gender into our work? And interestingly, even where there is no gender mandate. So we started working on, again, Sunita serves as an advisor to the program, which is called Learning Equalizer. And we started working on designing curriculum for that, learning materials for that. This is based on the RCT tested program, which is at scale in Odisha, called Utkarsh. It is in Karnataka, called Marusinchana. And we started to look at, teaching and learning content there. And it was like, but if you're doing this for Learning Equalizer, nobody's actually stopped us from reframing gender roles in our lessons. Nobody has stopped us from analyzing our own content or governmental content and reshaping that. And I think that's what shaping that new normal, which is inclusive, which is empowering, which is inspirational, which needs to be done in. And yes, you will have to tell in North India story of Rani Jhansi, and in Karnataka, you'll have to tell the story of Rani Chennamma. That's the level of detailing that you'll have to get into. But that intent and that lens has to be there. And I think those are two from which we know we will derive better gains. I know you said two, but there's one more that I want to add, which is also exposing our educators to the same empowerment frameworks that we expose our children to. Because so often, when you're working with educators, men and women alike, you realize that it's the same story that is playing out in their lives, right? And so many of our educators have come back and said, well, this wasn't available to me, as a way of thinking. Otherwise, I would have reshaped, how my life turned out. And I think that would be the third one.
My last question to Deepika. So, Deepika, you, Lendhan is one of the largest skills development, vocational training development organization. You partner with 15 states now. What, if you embark on a journey of integrating gender into that whole thing, what are the two lessons that you want to kind of take away from this discussion?
We consciously started focusing on this piece, and I must in fact confess that though it has been of keen interest of the organization, but maybe we are realizing more and more that it has to be given a very explicit focus. How do we bring these gender norms in the content, the way the trainings are happen, the way the trainer selection is happen, right? So like even in the states and wherever we are doing the direct implementation program, whenever it comes to, for example, automotive, then most of the trainers would be male, like 99% in 10 to 100%, right? So how do we change that narrative and very focusedly, right? Very consciously, and not like by the way type of thing ki acha chalo मिल गई है एक फीमेल तो ले लेते हैं, not like that, but have a very conscious decision making there, that how do we ensure that this much percentage of female trainers coming from this for this kind of skill implementation, because I think all of them also spoke about the role modeling. So these are the ways you role model in front of your students. The other thing certainly is about the teacher capacity building, and that is coming time and again as a very important element. Not only from the content and delivery point of view, but even the pedagogical approaches, even them to face the parents as well, right? Because a teacher, if she's conducting session in a classroom where girls and boys both are sitting and talking about the menstruation hygiene, and boys going back to home and telling their parents, and parents calling the teachers that, oh, my teacher were talking about these subjects, and parents are like now shouting at the teachers. So how the teacher respond to such things, right? So I think not only on the content, but how to face these things which are coming parallelly also to the teachers is also very, very important. And of course, in the content piece, now developing a parallel content is also required, but how do we integrate in the content which is mandatory, which is part of the curriculum, not only in terms of text, but there are very visual elements also which are required to be incorporated. Earlier we were looking in the books that how the boys are representing when there is something like technical thing, but now if you look at there are already books. Kaushal Bodh has been published grade 6, 7th, 8th, and very, very focused work has happened in there. Like if there is a tie and dye project, it's a very fashion and very girly thing, but how the boys are being shown doing this. So I think these are some of the elements which you want to do.
Hi, my name is Bhargavi, and I'm just independently here, so no organization. But my question was exactly to what Pankaj just talked about. So talking about gender in non-binary terms, and related to what Neeta ji said in terms of, I know it is going to be a harder conversation in the short term, but in the long term, how do we, starting from washrooms? So if a washroom is a gender neutral washroom, and even the concept of what even gender is as a kid. I remember when I was a kid, I stood in the boys' line because I was not wearing earrings that day. So what is your self realization or self consciousness about identity? So how any of you can answer, how do you think about that? How that can be uh, framed into the policy, or even in terms of interventions, programming, just thinking about that.
My name is Sanjana. I'm from Enfold organization, is based out of Bangalore. Another aspect to what Pankaj said, I think one is the binary aspect, and also when we talk about gender, there's certain aspects that we leave out, or certain audiences, for example, intersex children or children with disabilities. I think it's very important that when we are talking about mainstreaming gender, that we bring in these conversations, because every single time we have a conference or something, we largely talking about women. And on that, the question is that how do we also engage boys and men into these conversations, because they're also victims of patriarchy. It's not just women, right? And my second question is that as we are talking about including it into education, we also understand that teachers are also burdened with a lot of work. So, and now with social media and AI coming up, how do we leverage AI and social media? Because the student is studying in the classroom and curriculum, but at the same time going back home, opening the smartphones, and there's plethora of information that's out there. So how do we counter that, or how do we complement that?
We didn't talk a lot about men and boys, but I mean, I'm assuming that when we talk about genders, we're talking about all genders, or when we're talking about girls, we're talking about all girls, right? And and girls who identify themselves. I mean, persons who identify themselves as girls as well. I think the importance of that is not lost on all of us, and we've wherever we are, working, we kind of take those thoughts consciously into those spaces. And I think gender neutral toilets have been something to, something that we've seen, we've spoken about in schools. And unfortunately, sometimes even lockable toilets are not available in areas where you work. Gender neutral toilets will be a far, far off kind of discussion, but those are important things to discuss. But thank you very much for all the, interesting points that you brought into today's discussion. Thank you
Thank
very
you so
much.
much, Palak.